She was desperate. The rich cowboy was cruel. The ranch changed them both. Part 1. The Cook with No Name. Sometimes, life doesn't shove you off a cliff. It hands you the rope and days you to tie it into something that can hold. Some people drown. Others build a ladder. That's what June Mercer did. She walked onto the richest, cruelest cowbow's land in all of Coldwater County with a fake name, a half-dead little brother, and no plan to survive the week. No one knew it yet, but the ranch was about to change. So was she. So was he. The first thing June saw when she stepped off the freight wagon was dust. Not just in the air, in the teeth of the wind, in her hair, in the creases of her second-hand boots. The second thing she saw was Cade Ranch stretched out like a kingdom built from sweat and stubbornness. Fences tall as railroad ties. Barns bigger than most town churches. And at the center of it all, the main house, dark wood, black shutters, and a flagpole with no flag. They don't raise it anymore, the wagon driver said, catching her staring. Why not? She asked. The man just clicked his tongue. Guess Silas Cade stopped caring what anyone thinks, including God. June didn't answer. She only adjusted her satchel, clutched Toby's thin hand, and walked. Inside the ranch gates, no one greeted her. She followed the scent of cooking fat toward the bunkhouse kitchens, keeping her head down, shoulders square. Her forged hire paper, the name June Molly inked in clean cursive, was folded 3 times in her pocket. Toby's cough rattled beside her. Bad. Too dry. She stopped by the shade of a water tower and let him sit. Just breathe slow, she murmured. We almost in. He nodded, pale. 14 and already shrunken from the fever that wouldn't quit. His eyes blinked hard against the light. A voice cut through the dust. You, June. She turned. A square-jawed man in a sweat-stained hat stood beside a meat cat. Name's Brent. I run the kitchens. You're late. I'm early, she said. Day early. Brent eyed her like a mule that might kick, then waved a hand. We short. You work, you stay. Mess up, you leave. He didn't ask for her paper. Good. He was too busy slamming butchered ribs onto a counter. Start with peeling spuds. Don't talk to the hands unless you got something worth saying. June rolled up her sleeves. I usually don't. By sundown, her back ached and her fingers stung, but the stew was salted right and no one had cursed her out loud. That counted as a good day. Toby slept in the hayloft behind the smokehouse, curled under a borrowed blanket. June had tucked in her satchel under his arm, the one with their real papers, the coin pouch, and the sheriff's wanted poster with her old face on it. Just in case. She was drying pots when it happened. Bootsteps. Heavy. Measured. The room went quiet. He stepped through the doorway like a shadow in daylight. Tall, clean-shaven, shirt crisp, hat untouched by dust. Silas Cade. Every ranch hand stood straighter. Even Brent swallowed hard. June kept scrubbing. Cade's eyes swept the room like a judge entering court. Then they landed on her. You're the new girl, he said. June nodded without looking up. He took a step closer. Name. She dried her hands slow. Turned. June Molly, she said, calm. You hired. Brent brought me in. His gaze flicked to the cook, then back. You cook, or you just play at it? Stew's in the pot. Taste it. He didn't. Instead, he walked past her, lifted the lid, sniffed once, then set it back. You stay in the bunkhouse. No, sir. Why not? I've got my brother with me. He's sick. We sleep near the smokehouse, out of the way. Don't remember offering free lodging for sick kin. You didn't. I didn't ask. The room held its breath. Cade's eyes narrowed. Not angry. Curious. Like someone staring at an animal they couldn't quite place. Then he spoke quietly. I don't tolerate mistakes. I don't tolerate laziness. And I sure as hell don't tolerate disrespect. June didn't blink. You'll get none of those from me. His jaw twitched once. A pause. Then he turned to Brent. Keep her till the end of the week. If she screws up, send her packing. He walked out without looking back. June exhaled. The room buzzed again, like wind after lightning. Brent muttered under his breath. You just stepped in it, girl. That night, June sat beside Toby's bedroll with her arms wrapped around her knees. The wind was sharp, the silence wide. Toby stirred. Was that him? She nodded. Was he scary? She thought a moment. No. Really. He's just a man. Toby coughed. I bet he hates women. I bet he hates everybody. They both smiled a little. 2 days later, a ranch hand broke his wrist when a colt kicked wrong. June was the only one who moved, wrapped the wound, braced the arm, tied it with a piece of flour sackcloth. The man stared at her in shock. Why'd you help me? She looked at his hand. Because you didn't deserve it. From the house on the hill, Silas Cade watched from a window. Watched her carry water in the cold. Watched her split kindling with hands too thin. Watched her never ask for help. The girl had guts. And something else he hadn't seen in a long time. Loyalty. By the second week, her hands were raw. Her apron never stayed clean. And she still hadn't smiled once. The men noticed. She didn't joke or flirt like the last few cooks. Didn't roll her eyes or groan when they tracked in mud. She worked. Fast. Hard. Without complaint. When someone cursed loud near Toby's sleeping spot behind the smokehouse, she came out with a ladle in hand and told them to take their noise elsewhere. They laughed. At first. Then they stopped. There was something sharp in her voice. Not fear. Something worse. Like she'd been through worse than them and wasn't impressed. Silas noticed too. He didn't say anything. Just watched. Studied. June caught him more than once. A shadow on the porch. A glance from a window. He didn't hide it. Neither did she. She just kept working. Then came the storm. It rolled in without warning. Black clouds curling like fists. Thunder cracking the air like bone. The bunkhouse roof was already worn from last winter. A week of sun and dust had made it worse. June was slicing onions when the first beam creaked. Then the second. A ranch hand burst into the kitchen. Roof sagging. Before anyone else moved, June threw down her knife and ran. The wind ripped at her braid. Rain stabbed like nails. She climbed the bunkhouse steps barefoot, skirts clinging, eyes scanning the wood. Get out, she shouted to the men inside. It's gonna fall. They hesitated, not used to a woman giving orders. That's when the beam cracked clean through. June jumped inside, ducked under the falling rafter, and grabbed the youngest stable boy by the collar. Dragged him out coughing. Went back for the rest. Silas arrived a moment later, drenched, boots stomping through the mud. What the hell? He saw her in the rafters, a hammer in one hand, a rope in the other, climbing the skeleton of the ceiling like she'd done it all her life. Get down, he barked. She didn't stop. Mercer. She didn't even look at him. Then her foot slipped. The board snapped. He lunged forward, caught her by the waist just as she fell. Mud and sweat and blood smeared between them. Don't touch me, she growled, voice ragged. Unless you gonna help. For the first time in a long time, Silas Cade obeyed an order. By morning, the storm had passed. The bunkhouse held. Barely. 2 rafters tied with knotted rope. 3 windows blown in. But no one was hurt. June sat beside the kitchen stove, one ankle wrapped in a torn dishcloth, soaking wet to the bone. Silas stood near the door, silent. She looked up once. I'm not sorry. I didn't ask you to be. She reached for a chipped mug of coffee. You gonna fire me? He leaned against the frame. Not today. She nodded. Took a sip. The silence between them stretched. Not cold. Just full. Finally, he said, Why'd you go back in? She stared into the fire. Because they wouldn't have moved fast enough. They listen to me. No, she said quietly. They fear you. His jaw clenched. But he didn't argue. That night, he didn't return to the main house. He worked alongside the hands, hammering new nails into the bunkhouse frame. When someone cursed about the mud, Silas just handed them a second tarp. No speeches. No orders. Just sweat. 2 days later, Brent pulled June aside. He raised your wage. She blinked. What? By $2. Backdated. And said Toby can sleep in the feed shed from now on. He left a cut there. June didn't respond right away. Just went back to peeling turnips. June, Brent added, quieter. I don't know what you did, but it's not the same. I didn't do anything, she said. But that night, when she checked the shed, the cot was there. A fresh blanket, too. Toby's eyes lit up like lanterns. Is it safe? He whispered. She nodded. It's clean. That's more than we had. He crawled onto the cot like it might vanish. She stood a moment longer, watching, breathing slow. And in the dark outside the doorway, she didn't see Silas standing in the rain again, just watching. By week's end, June caught him sitting beside Toby in the hay one morning, awkwardly holding a jar of honey. You ever taste the raw kind? He asked the boy. Toby blinked. No, sir. Silas set it down beside him. Helps the throat. At least that's what they say. June stood frozen by the fence, watching. Silas didn't look up, just nodded once and left. When she entered the kitchen later, he was there. Why do it? She asked. He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Because I was wrong. She tilted her head. About what? About what makes a man worth following. June folded her arms. And what is it? He met her gaze. Steady. Not fey. Not orders. She didn't nod. Didn't thank him. Just turned back to the stove and said, Stew'll be ready by 6. The next week, 3 ranch hands refused to eat unless June sat down first. She scowled, cursed under her breath. But Saturday, Silas passed by the window and saw it. June, tired but upright, eating beside men who once wouldn't meet her eyes. He didn't interrupt. Didn't need to. Because something was shifting at Cade Ranch. Something no one could quite name. Not a rebellion. Not a romance. Just a change. A quiet one. And sometimes, that's how revolutions begin. Some men break rules. Others break people. But the cruelest ones, they break themselves, and don't even notice. Until someone shows them what they've become. Silas Cade had never walked through the workers' mess hall with his hat in his hand. Until now, he didn't speak much. Never had. But that morning, something made him stop at the breakfast line. June was there, flipping cornbread onto plates, sleeves rolled, hands still healing from the storm week. Coffee? She asked flatly. He held out his cup. You ever sleep? She added, eyes on the iron pot. He hesitated. Some. Could have fooled me. He didn't smile. But he didn't scowl, either. Just waited while she pawed, then took the mug without a word. The men at the tables watched it all with quiet disbelief. The boss never came in here. Never stood in line. Never waited. But today he did. Because June had cracked something open in him, not with kindness, not with charm, but with stubborn, brutal honesty. She didn't owe him respect. She gave him effort. And that, somehow, demanded more from him than any fear ever had. That afternoon, Silas rode out to the southern fence with 2 hands. June watched from the stable, Toby by her side. Is he always like this now? The boy asked. Like what? Not yelling. June pulled his scarf tighter. Don't trust quiet. It's louder than noise, just harder to hear. Toby tilted his head. He gave me boots. June paused. What? Left them by the cot. They fit. She didn't answer right away. Just stared toward the fence line. I think, Toby added, He doesn't know how to say sorry. June looked down at her brother. Then we don't say thank you too fast. Later that week, the merchant's name came up. June was folding linens when she heard two ranch hands whispering near the barn wall about a girl on the run, about stolen coin, about a merchant in town who still wanted his money. Her shoulders stiffened. They didn't know. Not for sure. But it was enough. That night, she sat up long after Toby had fallen asleep. The cot creaked softly when she moved to the window. Silas was still out, alone, hammering something at the far corral. No lantern, just moonlight and grit. She should leave, she thought. Run before the town caught wind. Before the poster with her old face reached these hills. But then she saw the feed bag outside Toby's shed. Full. The boots. The blanket. The cough syrup. She'd only ever known pity that felt like poison. This wasn't that. This was something harder to walk away from. The next morning, she was hauling flour sacks when Silas appeared at the barn door. He didn't speak. Just took two from her arms. She blinked. You ever carried flour before? Plenty. Sure don't look like it. He set the bags down. You always this moody before breakfast? Only when I'm not being yelled at. A pause. Then, to her shock, he let out a small laugh. Not loud. Just a breath through his nose. But real. June blinked. You laughing or choking? She asked. Not sure yet, he muttered. She stared at him, wary. Why are you being civil? He wiped a dusty hand on his trousers. Because when a roof nearly crushes 3 men, and a barefoot woman saves them before I even get there, I start rethinking my approach. She folded her arms. You don't change easy. No. I bury things. That's easier. And guilt. He paused. That's hardest of all. Their eyes met. No flirting, no softness. Just truth. Then she handed him another flour sack. Lift with your legs, boss. That night, a man rode in late. Dusty, hard-eyed. From town. He handed Silas a letter. Rode off without staying. June saw it from the kitchen steps. She didn't need to read it to know what it was. A warning. A rumor. A name from the past. Her name. Silas read it twice. Folded it slow. Then, instead of burning it, he walked straight into the kitchen and handed it to her. June read it. Silent. Toby's name was in there too. She folded it back. So now you know. Silas leaned against the post. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have hired me? No. Would you have helped Toby? He looked away. Probably not. She nodded once. Then I did the right thing. He didn't argue. I didn't steal for greed, she added quietly. I stole because that man tried to own us. My brother was 12. Sick. Alone. And the merchant came to claim him like cattle. Silas's jaw tightened. That man's still alive. Last I checked. He stepped closer. If he sends someone, you stay behind the house. You hear me? She blinked. I mean it, he said. You're not running again. Silas didn't promise much. He barely promised hay in winter. But this felt like something. The next few days ran quiet. Silas met with the banker, raised wages across the ranch, hired a school teacher for the valley kids. No one asked why. Brent found 2 extra sacks of feed left by the cookhouse. For Mercer's brother, was all the note said. June began to trust the silence. Not believe in it, but trust it. Because every time she looked over her shoulder, Silas Cade was already walking toward the storm, not to stop it, but to meet it head-on. And every time she cooked a meal, or stitched a sleeve, or tended a wound, she did it not out of fear, but duty. To the land, to the boy, to the life she might finally get to keep. One evening, she found Silas outside the bunkhouse with his sleeves rolled, sanding the new rafters himself. She stepped up beside him. You do this for every storm. He didn't look over. Only the ones that change everything. She leaned on the frame. You used to be wise, didn't you? Much. She nodded. Still got a long way to go. I know. Another silence. Then he asked, Why'd you really come here? June thought a long time. Because when you've got no one, she said finally, you'll stand anywhere a man's willing to pay you to try. Silas stopped sanding. He looked at her, not like property, not like trouble, but like someone who finally understood the weight of being needed and not being ready for it. The merchant came in the dead of morning. 3 men, city boots thick with pride, rode up to Cade Ranch like they owned the sky. One of them even had a tin badge, bought, not earned. Silas saw them first, watched them from the porch, eyes narrow, thumb resting on the edge of his belt buckle. June was inside the bunkhouse, wrapping Toby's chest with warm flannel soaked in camphor. His cough had worsened with the cold, but his fever had broken. He needs town medicine, she whispered. The real kind. Toby blinked weakly. We can't afford. June hushed him with a smile. Don't worry about the how. Just rest. That's when the knock came. Hard. Loud. Not a request. A summons. She stepped outside. Silas was already there. The lead man, stiff collar, slick mustache, tipped his hat with mock courtesy. Way looking for a girl named Mercer. Real name. Stole from a merchant 6 months back. The brother too. Sheriff's orders. He pulled out the crumpled wanted flyer. June's old face stared back at her. Silas didn't even look at the paper. You're trespassing, he said flatly. The man smiled. We've got a badge. Silas stepped down from the porch. I don't care if you've got wings. This is my land. The third man raised his voice. You harboring a fugitive? No, Silas said. I'm protecting one. They laughed, until he added, You want to drag a sick 14-year-old out of his bed. Go ahead. But you'll do it over my bones. June stood behind him, breath shallow. Don't. He turned. You don't run. Not anymore. The men didn't get Toby. Didn't get June. They rode off grumbling, the badge tucked away like a toy nobody respected. Later that night, June found Silas alone near the barn, nursing a busted knuckle. She didn't ask what it hit. He didn't offer. Instead, she brought out a small jar of salve from her apron, uncorked it, held his hand gently, like one might hold something already halfway healed. You didn't have to do that, she said. I did. You could have lost everything. I already had, he said quietly. You just reminded me how to earn some of it back. June spent the next few days working like always, rising before light, boiling broth, feeding ranch hands with the same iron will. But something was different now. They nodded when she passed, smiled without teasing. One even tipped his hat, like she was family. And Toby was getting better. Slowly, but real this time. Because Silas had ridden to town behind her back and sent for a doctor, a real one, quietly paid in full. When June found out, she stormed to the porch and threw the coin pouch at his feet. I didn't ask for favors. He didn't pick it up. Wasn't a favor. Was survival. I can take care of my own. I know, he said softly. But now you don't have to do it alone. It wasn't love. Not the kind that fits in ballads or books. June didn't swoon. Silas didn't kiss her hand under stars. They just worked. And slowly, the ranch worked too. The hands stayed longer. Wages came on time. The kitchen fed twice as much with half the waste. And the men who used to rule with barked threats now led by standing beside his men, hammer in one hand, coffee in the other. On a warm dusk in mid-autumn, June sat on the porch step beside Toby, who was painting crude little animals on the back of a feed sack. Cow, he muttered, holding up the first. Yours. She laughed. Not mine. Horse, he added. Silas's. He'd like that. Then a pause. You staying? He asked, quiet. She looked out at the hills. The sun had dropped low, pouring gold over the fence posts. I think I am, she said, even if he doesn't. This isn't about him, she cut in gently. It's about me. You. The ranch. It's ours now. Not by title. By effort. Toby nodded, then smiled, and in the doorway behind them, Silas listened without stepping forward, because he knew what mattered now wasn't being needed. It was being worth staying for. 1 week later, Silas came to the kitchen early. June was elbow-deep in flour, sleeves white and hair fraying at the braid. I'm not done yet, she said, without looking up. I didn't come for food. She glanced over. He was holding something wrapped in oilcloth. What's that? A contract, he said. Equal share of the Northfield profits. For you. June stared. I'm offering partnership, he continued. Not marriage. Not favors. Not payment. Why? Because you earned it. She set down the flour bowl, wiped her hands on her apron, stepped forward slowly. You trying to buy me now? No, he said. I'm trying to keep the only person who ever looked me in the eye without flinching. A long, quiet breath passed between them. June unwrapped the cloth. Read the paper. Her name, June Morley, was crossed out. Underneath, June Mercer. Real name. No lies. I'll think about it, she said. Silas nodded once. That's all I ask. She folded the paper and slid it into her apron pocket. You ever raise that flag again? She asked, tipping her chin toward the pole above the ranch house. He followed her gaze. Not yet. Well, she muttered, turning back to the dough. Maybe it's time you remembered what you're standing on. He smiled. A real one this time. Not because she loved him, but because she didn't have to. That night, as the stars stretched over Cade Ranch, a faded flag climbed the pole again for the first time in 5 years. The wind caught it. It fluttered wide. And below it stood a woman with grit in her spine, a boy with hope in his chest, and a man no longer afraid of his own shadow. Not a love story. A life rebuilt. And that was more than enough.